Good morning, friends. This video is going to be on solving rational equations. So what we've been doing the past couple weeks is simplifying them, but now what's different is we have an equal sign. So we have equations, no longer expressions. So the very first thing we want to do is we do want to remember that because you cannot have a denominator that has 0 in it, the very first thing we need to do is we need to look at our denominators, the first of which is x minus 6. And so we need to make a statement that when we do this problem, whatever we find x to be, it cannot equal 6. I'm sorry, yes, it cannot equal 6. And the reason it can't equal 6 is if we put 6 in where x is, then we get a fraction bar, a fraction that has 0 in the denominator, and that's undefined. So we can't, whatever x turns out to be, if it turns out to be 6, then we have to say that there is no answer, that there is no solution. So we have to state that. The other thing we need to do is we need to look at the other denominator. Whoops. We need to look at the other denominator and do the same thing. So when we look at the other denominator is x minus 4. So that also means that x cannot be 4 as well. So we know what two answers will give us an undefined or does not exist. We'll put does not exist in Canvas. Okay, so first thing you want to do is you do kind of want to look at that. And that also forces you to look at your denominators. So if you go back in your head to where you were adding or subtracting fractions, you would need the same denominator. So basically, you need these denominators to be the same. So you need the denominator to be x minus 6 and x minus 4. And then you ask yourself that question, what is the first denominator missing? And the first denominator is missing x minus 4. So we're going to have to multiply this fraction by x minus 4. And then you ask yourself the same question with what is the next one missing? The next one is missing x minus 6. So you have to multiply this by x minus 6. And then you write down what the numerators would be. So you have x times x minus 4 and 1 times x minus 6. Now, what's really cool about this that did not happen before when you were doing adding and subtracting is because the denominators are the same and because you have an equal sign, the denominators will cancel out. So the denominators will cancel out, and I could show you why. It would take a long time, but I would be happy to do that with you individually. But here's what you need to know. You just have to trust that now that the denominators are the same and you have an equal sign, the denominators are no longer in the problem. So now what you have is the problem of x squared minus 4x is equal to x minus 6. But now what you have to do is solve that problem. So it's a quadratic because it has a square in it. So we're going to subtract x and add 6 to both sides. And that is going to give us x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Then we need to factor that. And when we factor it, it is x minus 2 and x minus 3. And so x will equal 2 and x will equal 3. So in Canvas, you're going to say the values x cannot be are 4 and 6, and x is equal to 2 and 3. All right. So this one. First thing we want to notice is that we have an interesting issue right here, that is factorable. So everything else is going to stay exactly as it is. So that's not changing, and this is going to say equals 18 over x plus 3, x minus 3. Okay. Then we're going to say that x cannot equal positive or negative 3. Because if you take this and solve it, you would get positive 3. And if you take this and solve it, you would get negative 3. So when we do this math problem, if we get the answer to be positive 3 or negative 3, we have to exclude it from our answers. Okay? All right. Now we're going to see what the denominator is going to be. And the denominator is going to be x plus 3, x minus 3. And in order to be able to do that, this fraction needs an x plus 3. And this fraction needs an x minus 3. And the fraction on the right doesn't need anything. So when we go to simplify that, we are going to have x squared plus 3x plus 2x squared minus 6 is 18. So x times x is x squared, x times 3 is 3x, 2x times x is 2x squared, 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. Glad I did that. And then equals 18. Now, because all the denominators are the same, and it is an equation, not an expression, because in this equation it is an equal to, not an expression, the denominators no longer exist. So they can be struck. So then we have this quadratic. So we're going to rearrange it. So we're going to write let's see with color. This is the only x squared term I have, so I'm going to write it first. So I have 2x squared. Oh no, I have another one. Hang on. Oop, that needs to be highlighted. This one. So if I combine those two things, I'm going to have 3x squared. I have a 3x and a negative 6x, which is going to give me negative 3x. And then I have equals 18. But but I need the 18 on the other side because I'm going to factor this, so I need it to be equal to 0. So I have 3x squared minus 3x minus 18 equals 0. The entire problem has a 3 in it, so I can pull the 3 out, which will give me x squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. And then this is factorable. X minus 3, x plus 2. And of course, we still have this 3. Then if we set every factor equal to 0, this would say 3 equals 0, which is not true. This would say x equals 3. And this would say x equals negative 2. But if we go back up here to our very beginning statement, our very beginning statement says x cannot be 3. So that is out. So our only answer to the problem is this. So when we go to write this in Canvas, Canvas is going to say the values x cannot be, and you are going to write positive and negative 3. And then Canvas is going to say, so x equals, and you are going to say negative 2. Okay. So the first thing we are going to do is notice that this is factorable. So we're going to rewrite the problem in most factored form. So what do? We are going to step 1. And then we're going to do a common denominator. So the common denominator would be x plus 2, x minus 2. Which means this needs an x minus 2. This doesn't need anything. This needs an x plus 2. So then this is actually simplify. So if we simplify this, 3 times x and 3 times negative 2, 3 times x, 3 times negative 2, and 12, and negative 1x, negative 2, negative 1x, and negative 2. So that's going to give us, we're going to remember at this point, because it is an equation, the denominators will cancel each other out. So we would have on this side of the equal sign 3x plus 6. On the other side of the equal sign, we would have negative 1x plus 2. And so the next step is to solve. So we would add 1x to both sides and subtract 6 from both sides. And that would give us 4x equals -4. So x equals -1. Oh, we forgot to make our list of numbers that x cannot be. X cannot be positive or -2. So that needs to be in here somewhere. And that needs to happen. So first of all, hang on a minute. These numbers are going to need to change. So first of all, that needs to happen right here. So step 2 should be list numbers x cannot be. Then get a common denominator, then simplify, then solve. I think that's the right way to do that. So then in Canvas is going to say the numbers x cannot be, and you're going to say plus and minus 2, and then it's going to ask you for x, and you're going to say x is equal to -1. Okay, so let's follow these steps on this problem. And see how we do. Okay, so step 1, write completely factored form. Okay, so the completely factored form, it is already completely factored. Okay, so that's done. List the numbers x cannot be. X cannot be 0 and plus and minus 1. Because if you did x minus 1 equals 0, then x would be 1. If you did x equals 0, and if you did x plus 1 equals 0, then x would be -1. So if we look at each denominator, this denominator says x can't be 1, this denominator says x can't be 0, and this denominator says x can't be -1. So that is why we have those 3 things x cannot be. Okay, now that we have that, get a common denominator. Common denominator is going to be x plus 1, and x minus 1. So that means this denominator needs to be multiplied by x and x plus 1. This denominator needs to be multiplied by x plus 1, x minus 1. And this denominator needs to be multiplied by x minus 1. So the top here would be multiplied by, oh my god, this is horrible, x squared plus x, because that's what that would be. This needs to be multiplied by x squared minus 1, because that's what that would be. And this needs to be multiplied by x squared minus x. Okay. So what is that going to give us? Wow, it's going to be a mess. So I think I might have to write this out to get it better. So x squared plus x times x plus 1. And then 2 times x squared minus 1. And then x times x squared minus x. There's so much x here. All right, so now x squared times x is x cubed. X squared times 1 is x squared. X times x is x squared. X times 1 is x. 2 times x squared is plus 2x squared. 2x times negative 1 is minus 2. X times x squared is x cubed. X times x is negative x squared. And the denominators cancel out. Okay, so let's combine like terms before we do any moving things around the equal signs, okay? So this is an x cubed, and it is the only one I have on this side. Well, actually, life might be easier to do this. This x cubed and that x cubed will cancel each other out. So those are gone. X squared, 2x squared. I'm going to leave that negative x squared over there for the moment just because I don't want to do all that math in my head. So x squared and 2x squared is 4x squareds. And then I have a plus x and a minus 2 on this side. And over here I have a negative x squared. So if I add this x squared to this x squared, I have 5x squareds plus x minus 2 equals 0. And this is not going to be factorable because I would need factors of negative 10 that add to 1, and there aren't any. So now I'm going to have to use the quadratic formula, which is x equals negative b plus and minus b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Oh, this is a beast. Okay, so x is going to equal negative 1 plus and minus negative 1 squared minus 4ac all over 2 times 1. This isn't a negative. Negative b plus and minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So x equals negative 1 plus and minus d square root of 41 over 2. And that's going to be your answer. So in Canvas, the way you're going to write this is the numbers x cannot be zero and positive and negative 1. And x is equal negative 1 plus and minus the square root of 41 divided by 2. That is it. my friends. I really don't think we'll have many like the last one, but sometimes things happen. So these are, whoops, perfect timing. These are the steps. But obviously each one of those steps has steps in them. So there you go. All right, you got this. And of course, we'll work on it together in class. If you have questions, be sure to ask. And you're also welcome to email me. Have a great day, friends.